11 financial review of the Mighty River Power Limited be noted. Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. When the Commerce Committee did its report on Mighty River Power, it was owned by 100% by New Zealanders. And as I stand here today, Mr Chair, we know that 2.5% of New Zealanders only have bought into the shares of this company. Nick Smith says rubbish. This asset sale is one of the greatest transfers of wealth away from all New Zealanders to Nick Smith and his mates, because that's what this is about. Taking away from New Zealanders an asset that has been built up over generations and putting it into the hands of a small minority. Mighty River Power is a company that can be proud of its record. It's a company that has done good things in its time as an SOE, that has returned significant dividends to New Zealanders. And this national government says we will take that out of the hands of all New Zealand taxpayers and put it into the hands of 2.5% of New Zealanders. And don't let anyone say that if the national government couldn't have gotten away with it, it would have been 100% sale. Of course it would have been 100% sale. We know that's what the National Party wanted. They couldn't get away with it, so they've gone for selling off 49% of what all New Zealanders own and giving it to those 2.5%. And Mr Speaker, we've seen from the Mighty River Power CEO Doug Heffernan some interesting behaviour, both in the committee itself, in the financial review, where... What was that? Doug Heffernan in the committee itself, where Mighty River Power had actually failed to answer the questions that had been put to it by the Select Committee. And that's just the beginning, Mr Chair, because we know under the model that this government has put through, there's no role now for the Official Information Act with these companies. There's no role for the Ombudsman. New Zealanders might think that they've still got some say in this company, but no, this national government has taken that away and said there'll be no transparency anymore for these companies. Absolutely disgraceful, and we saw the beginning of that from Doug Heffernan. But Doug Heffernan is paid over $1 million a year to be the chief executive of Mighty River Power, $1.5 million a year. And he came out when Labour released its New Zealand power policy and described it as socialism. He was running the National Party's lines. And that is not what we would expect of a chief executive. But what's more, it's so wrong, because if the National Party actually believes that, they are saying that all the states of America that have a single buyer model are socialist. That's what the National Party is saying. What the National Party don't want to acknowledge is that currently Mighty River Power has been part of an uncompetitive electricity market in New Zealand. There is not competition in the New Zealand retail market. We have the gentailers that dominate the market. We have the super profits that have been taken out time and time again, and there is no competitive market. So when the Labour Party says it is time to introduce some proper competition, and we know that that will happen. We know, Mr Chair, that there will now be competition in the retail sector and consumers will now come first. The National Party says no. The National Party says we don't want a bar of consumers having lower power prices. Well, Mr Chair, I will tell you that on this side of the House, that is our priority, to give New Zealanders a fair go when it comes to their electricity system, to be able to say we can actually lower power prices for consumers and for small businesses, 5 to 7% for small businesses. That'll help generate wealth in this country. That'll help generate jobs in this country, and the National Party don't want a bar of it. They want to keep power prices high. And I challenge any member over there to get up and tell me under the current settings for the electricity industry, will power prices come down? Because the answer is no, they won't. They'll keep tracking up, and New Zealanders will keep having super profits gouged out of them by companies. What we want on this side of the House is a fair rate of return. Companies like Mighty River Power will still be able to get a fair rate of return, but what they won't be able to do is get the super profits. John Hayes says it's communist. John Hayes says it's communist. Well, I want John Hayes to go to the state of Virginia, to the state of Texas, and tell those people that they're communists, because what they have is a single buyer model for power, a single buyer model for power that actually puts consumers at the centre and says Electricity is important. Electricity is something that everybody needs. There's no choice in that. We need to make sure that consumers are getting a fair go instead of having super profits ripped out from under them. National doesn't care about high power prices. Labor does, and we will be reducing them.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I have got to take on the economic lunacy that we have just heard from the Deputy Leader of the Labor Party. But let's first nail him on the facts. He just claimed that only 2